Let's get straight into our next speaker, Darren Godwell, one of Indigenous Australia's most well-credentialed executives.
So I want to talk about some of the free trade responses, in particular around the new economy and new opportunities. And so there are a number of elements here which I want to touch on. Firstly is Indigenous people involvement in investment and trade matters, commerce and business is not a new thing. Okay, it's not a new thing. It's been around for a long time. It's obviously been around for many tens of thousands of years as our people traded amongst ourselves between nations across the continent. It also existed where there was that trade internationally, what we now know, across the waters and then up into the region. So, whilst people might think, oh, that's a clever thing to note or that's a nice piece of history, what it actually means is that Australia's first business people were Indigenous. It means our first companies and our first commercial entities and negotiations were conducted by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It means that our first economies were built and sustained by Aboriginal people. And so you really need to take this to heart, because so often we step into this space and every white person want to lecture us about how to be commercially minded from their government desk job. And so this is something we really want to start to grasp and we want to understand a little bit better. And the quicker we do it, the quicker we'll be able to proceed. We're starting to see now an emerging international standard around commercialisation on agreed terms. If you haven't heard already, there's an international standard known as Free, Prior, Informed Consent, FPIC. So the International Development Banks adopted it many years ago and it's now a standard practice. You know who it's not standard practice with? Mining companies that they think they can go destroy culturally significant areas. Because we know there's no free, prior, informed consent if you're doing that. And so some people want to make this more complicated than it actually is. Please, rest assured, everybody can grasp it. It's in 4 words: free, prior, informed consent. Okay, I'm going to talk about a really exciting thing here for a couple of minutes, please. So champagne is really important in trade matters, not because that's what you celebrate with when you've signed a deal, but because in the early 70s, the French started working on protection for champagne as an agricultural product. And they took it up within their trade negotiations. And the thing that the French really wanted to work on was they really wanted to look at the uniqueness of champagne and the fact that champagne was a reflection of 2 characteristics. Champagne itself is a manufactured good that takes on a sense of uniqueness because of the land in which the grapes are grown, so the land, the terroir, and then the culture of the people that actually make it, the traditions and the practices of people. So the case law for champagne said it's unique because the land is unique and the culture of the people that maintain and manufacture it is unique as well. Now, I'm an older bloke, but this made me cry. When I saw that case law and I saw how effective they were arguing for the exact same thing our people have been arguing for 234 years. The culture of the people is integral to the uniqueness of that product, and they said that's worth protecting. And so anybody that's involved in Indigenous botanicals, anybody that's involved in Indigenous knowledges in this country knows this argument.
My name is Declan Miller. I'm from Stickmob Studio and I'm from Alice Springs, Mbantua. So Stickmob Studio actually helps encourage people to create creative stuff. So whether that's graphic novels, comic books, narratives, podcasts, music, anything creative. We do focus mainly on stories told through drawings and told through visually because we believe that's one of the best ways to be able to help someone tell their story and express themselves creatively. We just want to be able to help support people and give them the space to be able to do that creatively and give them someone mentors and all that type of stuff. So the type of stories that Stickmob creative stories tell are climate change, complex families and all that stuff, and how that works and in Indigenous families and all that. We also tell stories about time travel and schooling and going through school and how that can affect certain people through mental illness and all that kind of stuff. When creating graphic novels, the age group between them is very varied. I've had workshops where kids are 8 years old to people 60-year-olds doing workshops and all that kind of stuff. It's a very broad in the range of amount of people that want to tell their story, so it's a good mixture of people.
Raylene, I'm thinking about the title, Bush Foods Back in Black Hands, and the theming of the whole AEDF, and I'm thinking about this First Nations Bush Foods and Botanicals Alliance. Tell us about how we got there and why this is important.
We feel as though we need to have a voice in this industry. This whole industry is built on our knowledge, our history, our connections to these plants and the stories that go with them. And still practicing today in the Northern Territory, we have such strong cultures, strong stories, and women are still dancing for these beautiful bush foods that grow here on our country. 20 years and we were still struggling. What's happening here? You know, why aren't we being recognised? Why aren't we being supported? Why are other businesses, why are we only representing 2 to 3% of the whole of the industry? How did this happen? You know, and slowly but surely people were accessing our knowledges without proper consultation, taking it into the labs, experimenting with it, extracting nutritional values, extracting the great stuff we already know. It's not written on paper for us. It's something we know from generation to generation. We didn't need to write it down. People had been promised a fair benefit share with the university, for example. People had introduced them to this plant, taken it into the lab, and then all of a sudden, it's been genetically modified. It no longer belongs to the people on those traditional lands. It now belongs to the university and the company that invested in finding out about that plant and changing it. And some of the dealings that was going on with these major companies that were had a lead role in manufacturing and value adding with our beautiful products off country. Nothing going back to the people on the ground. Our women are still sitting out there, don't even know what's going on. So this is why we got together and said it's time for us to make this an Indigenous-led industry.
We're a year at Chin Art. We're a new Indigenous art business that started here in Alice Springs this year, and my two partners are Mari Ryder and Kevin Bird, and my name is Paul Tolliday. We do sell the traditional stories of Mari and Kevin from a woman's and a man's perspective, but we also, what we offer that is the point of difference is if anybody were to tell us their story, Mari in particular will paint that story for them. She'll listen to it, she'll do a sketch of it to see if the story's been captured properly to produce your history on canvas.
It was all Paul's idea because I done one for him, his family story. Kevin, my partner, it makes him feel proud to pass on to the next generation, and maybe our son will pass it on to our grandson.
My name is Patrick Lamalami, also known as Cecil Namaniku. I'm from Goulburn Island. I live at Goulburn Island, but I have a corporation operating at Waminati Bay in the Western Wellington Range, West Arnhem. A traditional person. I love my culture and I love to share my culture using my organization to stand on both sides of the world, on my world and then in the non-indigenous. Kurang bondo ka ngapi ngamin Umen manuri gut bana menakut. Dua dengar daguna.
Please welcome up your next speaker, Mr. Ernie Dingo.
Now, it's good to be here and feel the presence in this Ibrinya on Aranda country. But most importantly to those of you who haven't, is to close your eyes and smell the air and listen for past voices that sing in these old river gums here that were young when that beautiful melodic sound of that Aranda language was spoken here. And times have changed, but that old language with a lot of the language groups around town still resonate here from those days to today and for our future. And that's one thing I'm proud of coming here to Aranda country, to Alice, is that language is still important. Culture is still important. We all know how important it is. Can you imagine, back in the old century, last century, 80 years ago, language was prominent, strong. Law was strong. What have we got for 80 years' time? We don't have a brand. We don't have a particular object that we own as First Nations people. Then let's do something about it. So when we look at Aboriginal products that is national, who are we talking about? Is the government the answer? No, it is self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency in a business. We've got Indigenous business. How do we put this conglomerate together? What holds it? What makes it a conglomerate? There should be something that we agree in. And our agreeing, basically, is taking control of ourselves. That's why you're here, to find solutions and how to make your business something that other people are going to look up to, something that other people are going to say, I want to be a part of that business.
What got me interested in skateboarding, I looked at it pretty funny, it was quirky, but weird, but also the creative side of things as well with skateboarding, also the community side of things with skateboarding. And I wanted to bring that back to home community as well and curate that so then young people can create their own community as well within skateboarding and how positive it is. Spinback Skateboards, we do workshops at local communities as well. We've just been working on our own community Ginger Portal. We're teaching young kids, boys and girls, skateboarding skills and also all the other social skills as well, developing their own kind of encouragement as well and lifelong skills as well within skateboarding that creates also their own outlook on life, but also that outlook on having fun within a good environment as well. I'm still pretty blown away of last year as well that we had our first kind of order from San Diego, California, which is our first international order. And then after that was just, California, Canada, UK. It just reaches, I couldn't believe it just reached over across the world, other countries.
The 10th Aboriginal Economic Development Forum continues to be one of Australia's most important economic events, with the Aboriginal business sector currently growing more rapidly than the rest of the economy.